Welcome to It Matters Radio's spoken word broadcast with hosts Monica Brinkman and Kenneth Ween. It Matters Radio brings you the very best with a caring guest-focused atmosphere, hot topics, and meaningful conversation. Let's join Ken and Monica as we bring you today's It Matters Radio.
Nice to be here tonight with It Matters Radio, and I have a very special project to tell people about. It's a book that I had the great pleasure of helping to edit. It's called The Nettle Tree. The title's down there at the bottom. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It is by Chase Enterprises Publishing as the publisher, and it's an anthology of speculative Western fiction. And we have, in addition to myself, we have three of the other people involved today. First off, sitting next to me in Arizona is Chris Wolfe, who is one of my favorite writers of zombie fiction. That's a genre that most people don't realize could make it into a book of Western speculative fiction. But I said, oh yeah. And then on screen with us is Tanya Moore, who wrote a fabulous story called Ephemera. And also my very good friend Clayton By, with whom I edited The Nettle Tree. And he also, of course, has a story entitled The Nettle Tree in the book. So with that brief intro to you all, Monica, let's talk Western speculative fiction.
Yes.
What is it? Wait, what is it? What is the genre? What?
Oh, what is it?
Yes.
Well, I billed it as a strangely different Western story. And the whole idea was to have the authors who came on board try to break out of the Western genre and yet maintain that feel of the Western. And I think that we did that remarkably well. There's some fantastic stories in this book. It's all over the map. People, because it's speculative fiction, we have people talking about other worlds, the end of the world, crossing of worlds. It's just a marvelous collection.
Mm-hmm. Now, Chris, when I asked you to join us and write, okay, but Tanya, did you start out with the notion of the West that you wanted to deal with, or did you start out with the speculative genre that you started? How did you approach it?
It's a bit funny because I sort of but the basic idea for the story came from a flash fiction piece that I wrote years and years ago that I really wanted at some point to elaborate on a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow it just worked its way into this particular story. And who knew? It works.
You know, there's something about your story I have to share. My reaction to it had this wonderful touch of the medieval in it. I mean, here it is. It's clearly futuristic. It's on another world and all of that. And yet, when I was reading it, I had this image of, from the Middle Ages, that people, when the Black Death was going through Europe,
Mm-hmm.
they would go out and they would wear these very strange masks. They looked like
Mm-hmm.
gargoyles and all kinds of birds and things. And through this mask, they would yell, "Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead!"
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of that kind of feeling.
Yeah, yeah. It's very very much about this sense. Now, you two write about death, a different kind of death.
Hmm.
Now, you have a website, I know, Tanya, right?
Yes, I do. It's TanyaRmore.com,
Hmm. And that's
and
Moore.
anyone wants to get a bit of a taste for what kind of fiction I write,
Mhm.
it's
Now, where
there.
are you going to find a?
Not necessarily. I think you will so much the macabre sense. You what mostly it's about transformation. And that's usually where that comes in, transformation through some kind of end or death. But that's mainly the main point. It's not so much, the macabre and the gory stuff and this is what's happening, but
Huh,
usually the
how the
characters are
characters are
changed
transformed.
somehow. Yeah, there's some kind of transformation that happens.
Any zombies?
No, that's what I managed to worm my way into just yet.
Now, Chris and I had a very interesting talk one day about his story, and I was asking him, in effect, why do these people go on? And all zombie literature that I have read so far,
Hmm.
none of it really strikes me. I would, if I saw a pack of zombies coming, I have to admit it, I'm a quitter in life. I would just go, okay, guys, have at me. But Chris's characters strive to continue. They strive to live
Yeah.
and to go for one. And I asked him, and I'm going to ask him now for the show, Chris, what drives people in your mind to live?
I don't know. It's a good question. It's actually, it's an inherently difficult question to answer because we technically don't know. I mean, every human being that has been born has died, yet we have it within ourselves to rage against, the dying of the light. We want to go for it. We for some reason we want to live. And that's why I'm not a really a true atheist, is because there has to be something afterwards, is because we for some reason want to keep going when we're all going to die. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's illogical. But that's the main reason, is it's just it's within us. It's, I mean, it would be very hard if I was placed in a situation where a pack of zombies was running after me. It would be very hard to use it on myself. It would be very difficult. I would have to. I couldn't answer it until it happened. I mean, to use the last bullet on myself or use the last bullet on a zombie and then start wailing away with your fists. I mean, just
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
fight.
Go down chewing, is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Go down
And
swinging.
I, I like to think that a part of it is that as humans, we have this kind of drive or curiosity.
Mm,
Even if it's the most horrendous thing, we want to survive just.
yeah.
I,
Yes.
I guess I'm the only. Clayton, your story
Yes.
is a very interesting take on the Western because you have two characters, well, three if we count the horse,
Hmm.
uh, who are engaged in a shootout, very much traditional Western, but it's the characters who are different.
Mhm.
That's right.
You want to say a little bit, not too much, because we don't want to give away plots here. We want folks to want to buy the Nettle Tree and find and read these wonderful stories. But you want to say something about your characters.
Well, the characters that I write about in any characters that I purposely drop into the fire, into them,
Sure.
and I often don't have any idea what they're going to do. I just let the story unfold and see what happens. And in this case, the horse turned out to play a rather different role, and the foe was actually much more powerful than the hero, and it was just a combination of of different characters that saved the day.
Yeah.
It's
But
I like to do that in all my writing. I like to put really different characters into situations that we can recognize.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm.
One of the things that struck me, it's funny because you say the horse plays a different role, but in a way, I was immediately taken back. Staples of childhood, where he would say, "Silva, go get help." Silva, Silva would go.
Yeah, it was kind of reminded me of the Lone Ranger meets Supernatural. Like
Yeah, yeah, very,
Mm.
very much.
Yeah,
I got a definite like Dean and Sammy feeling from the hero. Actually the hero and the horse. Like, it was. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Supernatural, but
yeah.
Oh
Which
yeah.
is which?
yeah.
The funny thing is, I took personally, just to mention, I have a story in here, and I took a very different approach. This is one of the most autobiographical pieces I have ever written.
Hmm.
Oh.
It is about my notion of the West being a place that I came basically to start my life over
Mm.
and to get away from what I felt were the very negative impacts of my childhood.
Mhm.
And so this is a very autobiographical piece set as speculative Western fiction.
And it works.
I hope so,
It does. It
because it
does.
raises some questions about the choices we make and how we make them. And that to me is one of the great things about speculative fiction is that it raises in questions like the one I asked Chris,
Mhm.
big questions about life because we're taken out of life and put into something much bigger.
Yes, that's true.
Now
The
you know,
okay,
no,
these this most effect connected to the story, yet the writer wants to make it bigger than life,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
so that there's when the change happens, when the transformation that Tanya was talking about happens, it's very impactful.
mm-hmm, yeah. And a couple of the stories in here went, as people might suspect, in the direct.
Mm-hmm.
And one
Mhm.
of my favorites involves when the movies come back into real life,
Yes.
where the technology, and it's amazing because that raises a question that I think speculative fiction really demands us to consider, which is where does science, I'll use a kind of weird way of putting it, where does science become magic, or where do the two overlap? Like, if we bring back the dinosaurs,
Mhm.
you know, what is its implications, all the moral issues. And here we have the technology of virtual reality is what
Mhm.
that particular story is about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That was what I really got angry at when it ended, because that's why I don't like short stories really. I got a friend that loves short stories. That's all he reads, because he doesn't have a lot of time and he just wants one story, boom, done, and just that I'm like, hey.
Keep going, guys. Yeah.
It's
So you
funny
get
you
a
mentioned
novel
it.
thing that's really good, like, so where's the sequel? Like, we're
Yeah, I agree with you though, Chris. That was a story that had me so involved that I really hated to see it end, and yet it did at just
it
the
ended
right
well.
place, making us ask questions about the interplay, especially now. Now I have a grandson. He's like 12 years old now, and he's the youngest of my three grandchildren, and he's out wildly chasing Pokemon.
Me too.
I,
What's going on with this chase and Pokemon?
Pokemon band in Rolla, Missouri.
I'm a security guard. I've already thrown off 8 people
Ah,
that
well,
wandered
well,
out of the house.
and
I'm like,
that's the downside to this is that people don't use common sense waltzing into somebody's home
and it's 3:30 in the morning. I mean,
3:30 in the morning,
I'm like,
strolling around cemeteries in the middle of the night, and I'm
yeah.
like, wait a minute, I don't think this is the game's intent.
Now, I wanted to just, folks, we're talking about the ideas here,
Mhm.
and we're talking about these short stories and what they mean and what speculative fiction is. But I wanted to just give you a quick sample of some of the wonderful, wonderful writing here. And I'm just going to start. This is a short story called The Devil Tracker. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, even though I could. It's such a short thing. But I wanted to just give you a sense of the wonderful writers that we have in this book.
It's got to be under 500.
Oh, yeah. A halo of sunlight flaring into blue sky framed the wind-fashioned face of the white demon kneeling over him. The Apache lay on his back, abraded by the swale's craggy crust, felled by a bullet from a Winchester. The taut skin of his belly was warm from the blood that seeped from a wound's jagged hole. The carcass of his pony pinned his legs, leaving no chance of escape. Now, I think that's pretty darn good writing there.
It is phenomenal.
And I used that, just wanted to give people an idea that we're talking about some really very good writing here. But I also wanted to mention this one because one of the things that I love about these anthologies that Clayton Buy and Chase Enterprises Publishing bring out is that they give an opportunity for people who haven't published before
Hmm.
to publish and to get known. And Chris, this was his first paid gig. His mom didn't want him cashing the check, but he did. He gave her a picture of it. He said, "Don Clay, you could have saved him money." And the author of Devil Tracker, Kenny Wilson, who's just this wonderful, wonderful writer, has never bothered to publish anything. He's had a very successful career as an attorney, and he's just never bothered to publish. And I actually chased him down too and said, "You got to give me something," because I knew. Now, and Tanya, I believe that pretty much your only, other than your website, this is your only publications have been Chase Enterprises books, right?
I've had a few small publications, but not anything.
So it's one of the great things about this is that it gives us a chance to showcase some really fine writers that folks you might not otherwise hear about. And
Ken, now that everybody knows where they can purchase this wonderful book of anthologies, I thought that I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because you're always interviewing other people,
sure,
and it's you do a wonderful job of it. But I wanted to know a little bit about your part in this anthology, and
sure. Well, Clayton Buy, who of course we just had on, has this company up in Canada called Chase Enterprises Publishing. Clayton and I have become very good friends over the years. We work together on a couple projects. For example, the Right Room blog, which if people would like to find some nice stuff, folks, go online. It's called The Right, WRITE, Room, ROOM blog. And among other people who take part in it, by the way, is our wonderful host, Monica Brinkman. Now, so that's one of the projects. Anyway, Clay and I became friends over the time, and we've been very supportive of one another in many ways. So I was delighted when Clay said, "Hey, Ken, I want to do a new anthology. This one's going to be about speculative Western fiction." Now, I had actually contributed to an anthology a while back, I think, called The Speed of Dark. I think you had a piece in there, didn't you, Monica?
No, I missed that one. I wished I could because that was my specialty.
Oh, my.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was just so upset about it, but what can you do?
Well, we'll have to make sure we get into it. Well, anyway, so he asked me if I would co-edit this with him. And so my role was actually to read all of the submissions. Well, first was to help recruit people. And as I mentioned, one of the things I used it for was to bring people who otherwise wouldn't be published. For example, Chris, who's a lovely guy. I mean, he has self-published. He's a lovely guy. He's never actually had somebody say to him, "Hey, Chris, your stuff is good enough to
Yeah.
publish." And I think he's a lovely guy. I also think he's a very fine writer of a particular genre. So, I asked him. And this other fellow, Ken Wilson, Ken is a very bright, sophisticated gentleman who writes wonderful, wonderful stuff. And he's never been bothered to publish because he has a career as a lawyer, an attorney.
Right.
I said, "Gee, Ken, why don't you give us something?" And he did. And then I also used it to to support one of our really good friends from It Matters Radio, Phil Richardson, his
Yes.
book. And, Phil has been on the show and he writes wonderful flash fiction. So that was one of the reasons I said yes, was I wanted to reach out to some people and help them get a little notice. And so I used my picks. So we're very, like a reality show, like one of those contest
Yeah.
shows, America's Top
And
One.
and Clayton discovered Tanya,
Yeah.
and I'm telling you, if Clayton tells you that this is a wonderful author, they are. Because
Yeah.
he's quite picky, as are you, Ken.
So then we went through and we edited. Um, and we got down, work with people, and people said they really liked my editing approach. I didn't go through and say line by line changes. I just gave overview kind of comments about what I think they were, and people really seem to like that. So I may try editing more.
Yeah.
um,
Well, they can take what you tell them and then go forward and
yeah.
change it. Yeah. So I love that too.
I'm
I
going to
like.
take. There's one secret though. There's one very negative story to be told about the book, and it bothers the heck out of me. There's only one story in the book that really has Native American
Yeah.
content, particularly, and there was another story, and it was a great story, and it was written by one of our friends here at All Things That Matter Radio, It Matters Radio, that it's by Benjamin Dancer.
Oh, Benjamin's wonderful. Yeah.
Yes, he is. And wrote this great story, and somehow in the process of assembling the book, even though that he'd been paid for his story and it's like it got lost, and it
Oh.
would have meant having to redo the entire, and so it was a wonderful Native American oriented story. So that is one, and I hope people will look for for Benjamin's work because he really is an
Benjamin Dancer. And who knows, maybe there'll be an anthology about ethnicity in the future. Who know,
Yep.
and then he could submit it for that. So, that's great. Oh, it's a shame, but
But
at least you got his name out there so people
yeah,
can check
that's
him
why
out.
I wanted to mention that. And of course, I want to tell people it's called The Nettle Tree, and it is by Chase Enterprise Publishing. Now, it's available in print right now, and I understand that the ebooks will be available in the very near future.
Right. I love print anyway, though.
I do too.
But
And Monica, tomorrow, of course, Monday, I'm going to get myself over to the post office and drop a coffee off to you because I think you'll enjoy it.
oh, yes, I will. I
Yeah.
I just love, flash fiction, folks. I think most people like it. Uh, it, it- because it's something you can do in a short amount of time. You might love reading, but you don't really feel like getting into that big novel. Grab a book like this, and you're going to find at least a few stories in there that delight you, if not all of them.
Yeah. You
Can I?
know,
I wanted
Monica,
to
I
ask you.
want to interrupt you there for a minute because, folks, if you like short fiction like that, on in the Right Room blog, we actually now are offering connections to some of the short fiction by our members of the blog, including three wonderful collections by Monica Brinkman.
Yeah, if I get them up there, I still haven't done that yet.
Get them up where?
In the Right Room blog.
Oh, well, our tech person is working at getting that page up.
Oh,
It'll have all of the fast reads.
oh, that'll be wonderful.
Yeah, and then the next thing we need from you, Monica, is of course we need the trailers for your books so we can make sure that.
Yes. Well, thank you. I I love the Right Room blog because it's such a diversity. Most author sites you go to and the reviews and their I don't know, they're talking about marketing and that type of thing, but this is a place where you actually go and you read stories.
Mhm.
And that's a wonderful thing. And you can scroll through, all the stories and you can look at the authors. And I just think it's a great concept because there's so many author websites and author groups that are the same. Well, this one is giving you flash fictions and short stories to enjoy all the time. I'm not going to let you get away though yet. Can you tell them again what your contribution as far as a story
Oh
was?
yeah, sure.
You mentioned it before,
It's
but I
yeah,
wanted.
it's called Welcome Stranger, and as I said earlier when we were all together, it's very autobiographical in a very unique way. I moved out here to Arizona from obviously the East Coast, and anybody who listens to me talk knows I come from the East. Some confuse it because while I'm a New Englander by birth and early life, I then spent a lot of time in New York and a few
Yeah.
years in Jersey and college. So it's kind of a muddled East Coast, Northeast.
Sorry,
And
Punky's pushing my mic.
that's okay. Hi, Punky. And so the when I moved out here, it was because I really had kind of burned out in what I was doing, and I needed to start over.
Start over.
Yeah, and I also was coming to terms with some of my own post traumatic stress issues,
Yeah.
and so even though you won't see it, I mean, it's fiction. It's a work of fiction, and the protagonist is a woman.
Yes.
And so it's very hard to see, but it's really one of the most autobiographical things I have written.
Yeah. And I might mention that Ken has consoled so many people in his life to help them because you were a psychologist for many years.
Yes, I was. Yes. In
And
fact, somebody today just asked me if I would write a piece for her blog from that perspective. And
yeah.
of course, I said, yeah, as long as I can mention my wonderful novel, Memoirs from the Asylum.
I was just going to talk about that also because that really gives you an insight into many of the things that Ken dealt with. And You know, it's hard. It's hard to be a person that has empathy and caring and to every day go in and listen to these devastated people and try to help them and not get depressed yourself.
Mhm.
So, Ken, I thank you so much for all that work that you've done, and you still continue it by helping authors and also other guests who you have on the show, and I applaud you for that. So, in closing, I just want to remind everybody, please check out this anthology. It's excellent, and I just can't wait. I've heard about the stories today briefly, and I already love them, and I can't wait to get the book. And it's called The
Oh,
Nettle Tree.
yeah, and isn't that a great cover?
It
I love.
is. It is.
Yeah.
It's beautiful cover. So, Ken,
By the way, I should mention something. The interesting because it connects us all so much that although he does not have a story in here, the setup of the book and the graphics inside the book were done by another one of our mutual friends, who, of course, is part of the Right Room blog, Eduardo Savino.
oh, Eduardo is wonderful. I love Eduardo because he speaks his mind and he writes what he wants.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. You're going to find such diversity at the Right Room blog if you go there.
Mhm.
And we shouldn't have censorship ever. So I love the fact that the authors are allowed to approach subjects that they want to and present them no matter what they are. And thank you, Ken, for that. So please check out this wonderful, wonderful anthology. And let Ken know how you liked this story also. He would love to
Yes.
hear back from you.
People, we're very accessible, aren't we? Because
Yes,
folks can always contact us through the It Matters Radio website.
yes,
And of course, we also have, um, we respond.
yeah.
We have this policy that we try and respond to people.
Leave us a message on Facebook at It Matters Radio also.
Right, yeah.
And guys, I just want to let you also know that if you enjoy our podcasts, I mean, excuse me, our live shows, they're available on YouTube the
Mhm.
same evening that we broadcast them. So if you missed anything and you want to check it out, just go there. It's under our playlist, and this is under spoken word guest playlist, and we have ones under music. So, Ken, thank you so much for being with me today, and I know I'll see you very shortly.
Yes, we will see each other again on the radio.
All right. Take care. And Punky says hi to everybody. Bye bye, all.